You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again.
Dontre Hamilton, Eric Garner, John Crow III, Michael Brown, Ezeal Ford, Laquan McDonald, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Antonio Martin, Jeremy Reed, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Climax. We're changing our tone a little bit because, ironically, I just came off of a radio silent week, saw nothing, and I come back to a gut-wrenching video of a man not resisting arrest, perfectly compliant, and yet about an hour later, he is dead. That man's name was George Floyd, who died in custody of the Minneapolis police, causing many riots and outbreaks. But I'm not talking about it just to spread awareness in the news. At this point, everyone in North America, and quite frankly, the world is aware of it. I'm talking about it now because I'm a little frustrated, and honestly, it's with the people that I'm surrounded by. I'm fortunate to live in a neighborhood, in a city, in a province, in a country that deals with racial abuse and profiling in such a way that it's almost non-existent. It still happens, but we are fortunate to live, or I am fortunate to live in the place that we live, which is in the Montreal area, Greater Montreal area, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. But that being said, it goes without saying that that video and that this systematic, corrupt racism has to be stopped. That video with the words, "I can't breathe," being pretty much the only thing you can hear, has scarred everyone. It's disgusting, it's abhorrent, and it has to be stopped. But what are we supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? We look at that and we post on our social media. White people, we have work to do. No, I am of a mixed ethnicity, one of my parents being a visible minority. So to a certain extent, I understand, but I am someone that basically, for all intents and purposes, looks white. And so the first thing I need to say is, much like the abortion debate, it's not for me to tell people that are of African American descent or Canadian American or Afro-Euro, wherever. It is not for me to tell you or tell them or come off holier than thou saying this is what needs to happen because I know. Just like the abortion debate, it's a women's issue. Do I have an opinion on it? Sure. but it's not for me to impose my opinion on the situation right now. That's the first point. What I do think, though, regarding everyone talking about it, much like a very famous comedian, Anthony Jeselnik, has said, why don't we see if these same people are posting and talking about these acts next week, in a month, in 2 months, in a year? Black Lives Matter started in 2014. Are we still talking about Eric Garner? No. Ahmaud Arbery died almost 2 weeks ago now. Are we still talking about that? No, unfortunately, because there's a chain that keeps happening. And I'll talk about the riots in a second because it's really important. But your voice on social media, while it is good to share and spread awareness and unite as one united race, a human race, that's a good thing. It sure seems like a lot of people are just trying to say, don't forget about me today. Did you donate to the Minneapolis Relief Fund? Did you donate to the GoFundMes? Are you lobbying your government representatives? Are you doing anything outside of a social media post to make sure that you have an actual impact? I doubt it. So, ladies and gentlemen, before any of you post anything else about how racism is and people who are racist are bad, commit to an actual mobilization, practice, and protest. There are things you can actually do. Like I just said, you can donate to the GoFundMes. You can lobby your government representatives, be it in Canada, but especially in the US. You cannot vote for people, for senators, for House representatives, for Congress people, for state senators, anybody who supports this abhorrent violence and systematic racism in many police departments. What you can do is also maybe not vote for someone who's going to likely elect as a vice president the very senator of this state that just committed one of the worst acts we've seen on video. And of course, I'm talking about Amy Klobuchar. All these people who hate Trump might vote for the same person who's going to elect a senator who basically has already granted parole to Mr. Chauvin, the police officer who killed George Floyd, once already. Do your research, people. Mobilize and act. Show that resiliency is not just found in people trying to riot and make a difference, because peaceful protest has gone nowhere. Gather people together to actually make a difference, be it through monetary funds, peaceful protest, because I'm never going to condone violent riots, although, again, I'm about to get to that. I think I've reiterated the same point a couple of times, but let's try and actually make a difference and not just look for attention during a time of turmoil. Times are changing, and I hope all of you are safe and well, because I know we are right in the middle of a whopping pandemic of COVID-19. So my best wishes go out to everyone. But for fuck's sakes, people, let's go. Get off your asses, get off your Instagram, get off your 21st century millennial brain thinking, if that even is a saying. Mobilize. On my side street just now, I saw people just holding signs Some people care. Posting on social media doesn't mean anything until you actually commit to change and action and protest and donation and relief funds. Just 2 days ago in the city of Montreal, there was Laval police that arrested 2 black men because they wouldn't get out of their car. Suspicious of what? Nothing. They didn't even have alcohol inside. They didn't have drugs. Nothing. Contact your MPs. Contact your senators. Contact your congressmen. Apply your vote. Vote for people that represent what you believe in. That doesn't mean lesser of 2 evils. That doesn't mean making concessions. It's time to change. It's time to show resiliency. Now, regarding the riots, at no point would I objectively ever condone violent riots in the cities of Georgia and Minneapolis and LA. Objectively, rioting is bad. You should not be destroying the very city that makes up your identity, that you live in. But, people, what else are they supposed to do? When the very president in charge is going to say, you loot, we shoot, the tinders are already there. The fire is now burning. Have you heard their voices yet? Because this time, I don't know if it's going to go out. It may be wrong, but a message is trying to be sent. And if you don't hear it, United States governments across the states, at the different levels, at the mayoral level, at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, wake the fuck up. Or else this will continue. And anybody who says that this is not the right response to George Floyd and many other disenfranchised Black people's deaths, innocent Black people's lives, you're missing the bigger picture. It's like the great Reverend MLK, Martin Luther King, said, riots are simply the voice of the unheard. It's the voice of the resilient. So start being resilient. And on that note, I'm going to segue into our guest. Mark, you there?
Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Not bad. We have with us Mark Anthony, who is a longtime friend of mine. I've wanted to have him on for a while, and I just said, you know what? We're going to talk about The Last Dance. I obviously had to get my 2 cents in about the George Floyd situation, but Mark, if you want to add to that, you can. But it's good to have you, man. How have you been?
I've been good. Obviously, like you just talked about for the past couple of minutes with everything that's going on, I think the main message behind everything is just what's the next step? What's the next thing we could all do as a community to avoid situations like this, to avoid this happening over and over again, right? And one point that I would agree with you on is this happens way too often, and we forget it very, very quickly. So I hope this time, with everything that's going on, with all the videos, all the posts, all the marches going on in the city, like we had today in Montreal, I hope this will create a change. And from there on, we're going to continue advancing as a society, and always getting on to the next step. because right now we can't just keep complaining about everything. We can't be whining about this obvious racism that's still happening today in 2020. It's about how could we do the right actions, do the right thing to actually create a change for once. So I think we share the same view on that.
I'm glad you said that, man. It's funny because you brought up like one last point that I guess I want to finalize this with, and we'll get to the last dance because that's why I brought you on, and I can't wait to talk. But like, there are guidelines that, you know, either there have been a president's task force or Black Lives Matter has talked about. You know, there are things you can do that can very easily fix this, and you can lobby your government to do. You can have, you know, you can end broken windows policy. You can have community oversight, limit the use of physical and violent force. If you have problems and crimes committed by police, investigation and prosecutor, you can have community representation. Oh my God, that's so important right now. Body cams to show what police are doing all the time. 1 year minimum training, you know, and for-profit prison sentencing. There's just so much. There's so much that you can do, and those are just 8 very bare minimum things that you can have implemented to try and reduce and mitigate this, to try and actually commit to change. And I think that's what people need to start doing rather than, you know, looking for a little attention on their social media. Not that it's completely unwarranted, but I'm sure you and I both agree that it won't go anywhere if all we're doing is, you know, saying Black Lives Matter on social media once, you know?
Yeah, no doubt, agreed. Let's start taking the politics out of social media. Obviously, it's already a first step to raise awareness about it and to spread the word like, you know, with our friends, with our families, and you know,
Everybody
have the
already knows,
discussion.
man. Yeah, like you're right. You're so right.
It's just about, you know, what could we do next, and what are the tangible like actions that would, you know, actually remove this problem and this issue that we have in North America.
Amen, brother. Amen. Now, obviously, I brought you on because, and I want you to talk a bit about what you've done and who you are. So, Mark Anthony, we're going to talk about The Last Dance because everyone's been talking about that as well. It's a phenomenal phenomenal mini docu-series. It's 10 episodes on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, what is wrong with you? But before we get to that, Mark, since you're such a fan of basketball, why don't you take 2 minutes and talk about, you know, what basketball means to you and what you've done to try and help the game grow, at least in the Montreal area.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, like you just said, I'm a huge basketball fan. It's you know, the game has always been around me since a young age. So, you know, my first actual images of basketball that I saw was actually with Steve Nash, who is, for those who don't know, who is a future Hall of Famer, well, an actual Hall of Famer. He's, you know, he actually put Canada, one of the few players that put Canada on the map in terms of playing at an extremely high level. But I would say that the game has allowed me to really grow as a person. Like individually, I've met my best friends through playing basketball. I've learned discipline. I've learned achieving collective goals as a team. I've learned how to communicate according to different personalities and stuff like that. So I would say that overall, the game of basketball has really, you know, made who I am today. And just because of that, it's, you know, I really wanted to spread that love and spread that passion in the community. And you know, just to bring it back to what I did is a few years ago, a friend and I, we started a nonprofit organization called All Star Basketball. And the whole point of that was for us to use the game to reach out to kids that live in unprivileged areas in Montreal, to get them off the streets and in a gym, just to use the game as therapy. Because oftentimes we hear that sports are therapeutic for people, and that's true. And I could tell you that based on my personal experience and based on the comments I've received from the kids and the parents that we actually worked with.
Right.
So we started off with about 20 kids our first year in 2014 in our camps, and we were able to bring that up to 250 by year 4 or 5.
Damn.
So all of that
That's
has
amazing,
been,
man.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And I would say that all of that has been because we've always communicated the right message through basketball. We've always wanted to hire coaches and be coaches that teach the game the right way, teach actual skills on the court that will help you off the court. And overall, I think that was our biggest success. And that's pretty much it. That's all of what I've done in about 2 minutes.
What do you say? Man, you're a friend of mine. I'm not timing you at all, although it was a little over 2 minutes, so we're going to have to edit that. Finchy, let's go. No, by the way, Finchy is the fake editor that's always around, so he's like this omniscient being that's always kind of listening.
So that's the person I need to watch out for, right?
Basically. So I love that, and that's why I wanted to have you on, and we'll post a link under if any of you want to check it out and you're in the Montreal area, or if you're anywhere around the world and you just want to see what Canadian basketball is all about. We do take it seriously here, and I think it's a really good initiative. Yeah, Mark, we'll get into MJ, and this is kind of the segue. Like, how can we take basketball, or how do you take basketball and take the lessons taught from that specific sport and apply it into your everyday life?
Well, for me personally, and I think a lot of players and coaches can relate to this, is the main thing is, because we're dealing with a team sport, the main life skill that you're being taught on a daily basis is communicating, right? So what often happens is that obviously there are some players that are better than others. There are some players that get more minutes than others. And what that creates in a team environment is this sort of hierarchy, which, is felt amongst, the players, and oftentimes most of the time felt in the coaching staff. So it's all about like communicating roles, communicating thoughts with one another, because at the end of the day, it's all about winning, whether we like it or not, especially if we're playing the sport competitively. It's about achieving a collective goal of either, making a playoff run or, even winning a championship. So whether we like it or not, we're forced to talk to each other to achieve these short-term goals that we give each other during the season. And on the long-term run, like I said earlier, just the achieving and winning a championship. So if there's no communication in a team environment, well, that's going to be seen on the court, just based on chemistry, just basing yourself on how players interact with each other. That's going to be seen, it's going to be felt. So I would say that's the main skill that's taught through the game, right? Obviously you have stuff like I said earlier, discipline, and showing up in the gym every day, pushing yourself to your full potential, reaching that full potential, being ambitious, being perseverant. It's all things that I believe that are useful for an everyday life, whether or not you're trying to, whether or not you're in the sports industry or not, right? You always want to push yourself to be the best version of yourself, to reach your full potential, to eventually be at the best place you want to be. So yeah, those are my thoughts on what basketball did for me.
So do you think, first of all, I couldn't agree more. I think you have to take that team mindset and approach it to just about everything. So the way you build on this chemistry and cohesion with your teammates whether there's a hierarchy or not is how you can apply the same logic and actions in your work environment, in your relationship with your girlfriends. I don't see any difference. I couldn't agree with you more. Talking more specifically about The Last Dance,
Yeah.
it's funny because all of the things you just said, whether it's your attitude or how you make sure you're able to take criticisms or work with your other teammates or kind of embrace the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Of those things, what do you think MJ did so well? Look, I don't know if we're gonna dispute if he's the best or the GOAT or not. There's LeBron or him or Kobe or Kareem. I don't know what you think. Maybe if you want to give your take, you can. But what is it specifically that MJ did that made him the best?
So, that's a tough question, right? Because it could easily go through the route of where we're ending up debating on who the
That's
the
why I
best
brought
player
you
is,
on,
right?
man. That's why
Yeah,
I brought you
exactly.
on.
But I think what this docu-series did for me is, well, first it solidified for me the idea of MJ being, the
The
GOAT,
GOAT.
the greatest of all time. Because what was interesting and for me was, where everybody has access to all the statistics, right? So everybody has access to what went down throughout the 90s, what went down throughout those 2 3-peats and stuff like that.
Sure.
But what this docuseries showed is all the intangibles. So I think that goes back to your initial questions, right? So what did MJ do to earn all of that, all those accolades, all those titles under his name? First of all, truly, I believe that the main mastermind behind all of this is Phil Jackson, so the coach. So why I think that he's the mastermind behind all of it. He's the one that envisioned this from the start, and kind of predicted that all of this would go on this way. Was because he was always looking for bringing out, using the right strengths of each player to combine it to form this collective, this perfect team, right? And whether we like it or not, Michael Jordan, as we saw in the series, is he has his personality, right? He has that overly.
He's got a swagger, man. He's
Yeah,
got
it's
a swagger and a half. I love it.
Exactly. It's like this. He's people may say it's arrogant. People may say it's selfish, but there's something about it that just made it feel right. Maybe it's.
Did you think it was selfish? Did you think it was like too arrogant?
It would have been different for me if what he did on the court and how he acted off the court didn't match up with everything he was saying on camera and to his teammates.
Yeah.
Right.
So you like the fact that he was consistent, at least. Like, if you're gonna be this way, be like that, all the time.
Exactly, because then it's not as confusing for us from an external standpoint, right? So, we all know that at that time Michael Jordan was this global icon, but we all knew what we would get out of him. So we knew that the minute he would get on the court, all we would get is greatness. If it's a close game, we know that he would be the one that would close the game, right? Off the court, as we saw in the docuseries, we saw that he's competitive every single day. We saw that he's competitive no matter what. He's going to find something to prove to anyone that he's the best in literally everything. So would I say he's selfish? Maybe not, because I've seen, I saw the progression throughout, the series. And, even back in the days before even creating this idea of Michael Jordan, I knew this guy that was, he's a little older than me, and really he was taping all those seasons of the 90s, the 80s, and 70s. So when I was much younger, before creating and associating like all these accolades and titles to different players, I would ask him to give me the tapes so I could actually see for myself how he would be from the beginning of the game to the final buzzer. And to be honest, everything I saw in this docuseries just confirmed everything for me. So I would mainly say that he was an overly confident player. Saying he's selfish, you may have a case for it, but I wouldn't go to that extent.
What made him a champion was his off-court attitude. By off-court, I mean practice. So, like, maybe talk about that. So, in practice, looking at the documentary series, yeah, he would chirp you and he would roast the fuck out of you. Let's be 100% honest. He would hold no holds barred with him. He'd roast. He would light that fire under your ass, and he'd make sure you're going. You know, whether it be with Steve Kerr, Dennis Rodman, Scotty, like whoever he was with, he was, you know, who's the Croatian player, Kukoc?
Tony Kukoc, yeah.
Kukoc, there you go. You know, like there are so. See, this is why you're the expert. I'm not. so you look at the way he would just energize through his charisma, through his devotion to the game. He would energize the team, and he would set a standard. And that's something not found in many people, just in life in general, holding everyone else as accountable as you do yourself. It was unreal. And I think that was seen best. We're jumping ahead, but in that 98 final, because the whole point of this docu-series is to show, you know, the meaning of what that last dance really was, and like you said, to show the intangibles. So obviously they show his upbringing and how, you know, he wasn't necessarily drafted right away, and you know, from 84 up until the 90s, you know, he had trouble with the Detroit Pistons, and they faced a lot of adversity, and then finally they got the team, and Scotty came, and you know, things started to come together. But if we jump ahead to that very last dance, you know, they didn't have anything in the tank. You know, Michael played a game with the fucking flu, man. He was not okay. And then at one point he even played, you know, injured, and Scotty played injured. But maybe talk about the 98 final, or maybe the climax, no pun intended, of this docu-series. What is the whole point of that final series and that last championship that Michael managed to achieve, even though some would argue on paper the Chicago Bulls maybe weren't as good as the Utah Jazz, excuse me.
Utah Jazz, yeah.
Utah Jazz, there you go. So, you know, there was a difference, but those intangibles elevated the team. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah, so, you know, a reason why, you know, because like I said, when I was younger, I was looking at all these tapes and I was looking at all the finals, but the reason why I believe the 98 finals is just so iconic is just because you see, you know, throughout Jordan's career and throughout the Bulls' careers, right? All Bulls players, I mean, you see a progression that happens on a yearly basis, right? And that's, again, if I could bring it back to Phil Jackson, who is, like, I believe, once again, the mastermind behind all of this, you know, he was able to take the best player to ever play the game, the best player at that time who was on top of the world. The NBA was making him the face of the league, known worldwide. Everybody just wanted to see Jordan, even throughout that dream team in 92 in Barcelona. It was all about Jordan and everything he brought to the table. But what Phil Jackson was able to do, especially to Jordan, was to make him realize that, you know, at the end of the day, no matter how great you are and no matter how good you could score, no matter how many times you could hit that turnaround jump shot, you won't be able to do it on your own. And I think, you know, that's something that we often teach to kids playing in sports, is that, you know, learn to trust your teammates, learn to play with your strengths, and maybe you may be more talented than the other people that are next to you. But true greatness is determined by how could you make your teammates better, right? And I think that whole buildup, that whole progression, the yearly progression, you know, we see Steve Kerr coming out hitting big shots. We see John Paxson, who was, you know, I would say the pre-Steve Kerr. You know, Jordan learned how to find them at the right time, to trust them, and it ended up by, you know, they were hitting their shots at the right time, and that comes with confidence. You know, jump shooting is 50% technique, 50% confidence. And just having the best player next to you saying, hey, Steve, I trust you with this shot. John, he was saying to Steve Curry, we saw that footage when
Yeah,
lined
where
up,
he's
exactly. And
yeah.
Steve Kerr ready to live it up. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to hit that shot. So that's what made that whole series, and especially the 98 finals, a true masterpiece. It ended up with a movie ending, right? A final ankle breaker shot from the free throw line, all net for the win. And, it's just the whole grand scheme of things just made it iconic.
It's compelling because I was watching with my brother, who happens to be a basketball fan, and I love the sport, but I would call myself more of a hockey guy. I mean, this about me. When we talk, we'll talk about basketball, and you're the expert, and then we talk about hockey, and that's where I take over.
For sure.
But it's funny because my sister has watched this, my mom has watched this. So many people I never thought would have seen this saw it, and I think that speaks to the compelling factors and these enticing moments that just spark in you, and it's all brought forth by MJ, man.
Yeah.
What is it that makes MJ? We already know what makes him special. I mean, you described it before, but why is it that this is an athlete that transcends his sport? Maybe like Gretzky, Andre Agassi, but I don't think there's anybody like Michael that can reel you in. Now, again, don't get me wrong, The Last Dance, and I'm sure you would agree, was so well filmed. I mean, if this
amazing.
doesn't win
It was amazing.
a Golden Globe or some kind of Emmy or something, I don't know what the hell you people are doing up at the academies and the Hollywood foreign presses and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing. But, seriously, what is it that Michael does or has done to just attract anyone and everyone?
That's a really good question because I could relate to them. For example, my sister also, she never, even when I was playing, she would never come see my games. And right now,
She sounds like a great sister, man.
yeah, no, I love her to death. But just with this docuseries, like for her, for example, what brought her in was just that episode dedicated to Dennis Rodman, right?
Yeah.
About obviously, we saw all those crazy pictures of.
What are you talking about? Dennis Rodman is a straight shooter. Doesn't dye his hair. He's a totally normal person, not strange at all. I mean, obviously, we're both joking. I mean, we're going on a bit of a sidebar here.
Yeah.
Who the fuck, before game, I don't know if it was game 5 or game 6, and I'm pretty sure this was the 97 final, goes to wrestle with Hulk Hogan, and then comes back the next game and kills it. Who does that? This man was an alien. There's a reason he had a part on Third Rock from the Sun. This guy was a straight up fucking alien. I don't know where this guy came from. And Michael knew it, though. Michael knew that this guy was clutch no matter what.
Hey,
he was clutch no matter what.
They all knew it, right? And, everything around, again, relating back to Phil Jackson knew what he was getting when he got Dennis Rodman, right? He knew he was getting this rebel. He knew at times, Dennis just had to be Dennis, right? And I think that the way he was coaching and how mature the players were in that team, they knew what their respective role was. Sorry for that. And
welcome to podcasting, man. Sometimes you just blah.
I know those triple R's.
You'll get used to it, man. Okay, but you were saying that Dennis Rodman brought your sister in. So talk about that.
Yeah. So I think what's special about Dennis Rodman is just the fact that it was always more than. Well, actually, I was gonna say that it was more than basketball for him, but I think it was strictly basketball for him. He just really saw this as a job, but I don't say that in the meanest way possible, right? Because I do believe that Dennis Rodman was truly passionate about the game, knew his role. No matter what his coach would tell him to do, he would do it at 200%, and he would just follow the philosophy that every team had throughout that time in during the NBA. And you know, a lot of people, I've been talking to a lot of people about that, especially that Dennis Rodman episode, and it's just the fact that they just can't believe the fact that this guy would miss practice on purpose. He would, you know, do any, well, not voluntarily, but he would do anything to get the media on him, get cameras on him. But at the end of the day, you can't say anything bad on him because he would get you 20 to 25 rebounds a game, would lock your best guy up from, you know, the big man all the way to the guard spot. And it's just like, how could this guy do this with everything that's going on, the partying, the, you know, the wrestling, the Hulk Hogan and stuff like that? It's just
It's insane.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and people I don't think really get that.
So how did he reel? Because you just went on your own sidebar there. How did he get your sister in? Because we were trying to answer the question, like, why did MJ and why did the documentary entice everyone? And why does MJ just like transcend the sport? So you were going to talk about that?
Yeah, so thank you for putting me back on the right.
It's what I do, man. It's what I do.
It's just you know how everything was filmed. They presented it was more than basketball, and I think the content and the, you know, the video, the footage, the interviews just made it digestible for anyone, right? So for example, my sister, who does not know the rules of basketball, barely knows how many games or how the playoff all of the playoff things work and stuff like that, you know, she just understood the message behind everything, and she knew, and she was able to understand, okay, this is where it started, and this is where every player is from 91 to 92 and all the way to that final series against Utah. So just making it digestible for everyone, just making it, you know, consumable also. I think that's what really helped getting non-basketball fans on board with The Last Dance.
So the message is obviously what makes it, you know, digestible, like you said, but you didn't really say what's the message. Because there's a couple, but there's one big underlying message, at least that's what I think. What do you think it is? What spoke to you when you watched it?
Well, well, for me, you know, I'm always watching these basketball, you know, movies or docuseries from a coaching standpoint, right? So for me, what the main message was, it was especially like, you know, teach people based on their strengths, you know, make people utilize their strengths, you know, continue building, you know, working on their weaknesses to eventually maybe make those strengths. But, you know, when you're working in an environment, especially in sports, you're mainly looking at it from a season standpoint, right? So for example, when I was just working in Toronto with the Raptors 905, which is the G League affiliate team to the Toronto Raptors, right? And every time I was asking questions, so what's the plan for the next 2 years? How's the team gonna look? What's the coaching program gonna be, and all of that? And they would always tell me, let's finish this season first. Let's finish the regular season. Let's finish the playoffs. And from there, we're going to be able to build on something. And they wouldn't be able to do that because, you know, in that environment, the roster is always changing. So when I was watching The Last Dance, I was just everything I was hearing was relating back to Phil Jackson saying, Dennis is this type of player. Michael is this type of player. Scotty is this type of player. Now what we're going to do is put those all together and achieve a common goal. So for you,
it was like a know your surroundings kind of thing.
Yeah, you could put it that way. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, I mean, you have to. Well, I mean, the way I saw it was, I mean, there's a reason I started talking about, you know, Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, and then I segued into this because for me, this whole documentary was a story of resilience, and the story of those intangibles that you were talking about. Again, I'm not a basketball guy, but when I watched it, I could feel the sweat and tears and agony. I could feel the pain. I could feel the effort. It was palpable. You could almost reach through the screen. And this was for some of the things that were being shown like over 25, 30 years ago, and yet I still felt like I was there with them. But I wasn't just there with them feeling the emotions of, you know, anguish or, you know, anxiety or depression after the 94, 95 losses, especially when Michael did his half season. For me, it comes down to no matter what, even when you have every obstacle against you, if you are 100%, 1,000, I don't give a fuck, put in a number over 100. If you are that percentage over and committed to your dream, to your mission, to your goal, well then lock and load, baby. Lock
Yeah,
and fucking load. I didn't see how anyone was going to topple Michael up until those last two episodes in 97 and 98 because, I have to give respect to the Utah Jazz. What a great team.
an
That was
amazing
the
team.
epitome of team.
Yeah,
Absolute, pure, cohesive team.
it
And
was
they,
discipline, if
yes,
I could also add to that, right? They were truly disciplined. And once again, big players, really big players, future Hall of Famers, and again, little ego. So, I think that's also a part of their success.
yeah, I'm watching it and I'm almost in tears. I'm looking at it and I'm like, this man, with the help of his teammates and even at some points, I mean, he's not okay. Or even when, like, for example, there's a point at the end where Scotty can't even play because he's so
Yeah.
injured. You
Hmm.
know, if one person is greater than the sum of his parts, and every other person around him can then inspire themselves from that and be greater than the sum of their parts, well, then that is the underlying message. It's resilience from the sum that is
Yeah.
greater than all of their parts put together. That's how I saw it. That's the message. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. Just,
Yeah.
everyone together, greater than all, the sum
Yeah,
of their
for
parts.
sure.
That's it. And they left everything on the court. They made it seem like it was so easy, but now you know what it takes to get that far, to get a double three-peat. And it all starts with the attitude and spirit of NJ. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just to piggyback on those thoughts, because you're bringing a lot of good points, right?
yeah,
That Bulls team had an incredible ability to handle adversity. Um, they knew that they could control what they can control, and we saw that when they were going through the bad boy Pistons. They were getting beaten up, they were getting knocked on the ground, and what did they do once their season ended? Well, they didn't take time off, right? They were straight in the gym and just controlling what they can control, and
they beefed up.
exactly, and that's what
Yeah.
led them to have success in the future, right? And
And,
yeah, go
please
ahead.
go, keep going. No, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, and just a last point, they were able, and as much as we, Jerry Krause looked like the bad guy in all of this, we can't ignore that.
Jerry Krause, by the way, for those who don't know, he was the owner and manager of not the owner, excuse me, the
Just the
manager of the
manager.
team.
Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And as much as he was maybe portrayed as this bad guy and this envious guy, he still built that team, and he was able to surround the right players with the right coach and build the right culture for that franchise. And I think that's also a takeaway: surround yourself with the right people, right?
Oh,
and
I couldn't
and
agree more.
and
That's
you
music to my ears, man.
and you just saw everybody lift up. You saw the progression year after year after year, which led them to get 2 3-peats, which is just incredible, especially at that time with the level of talent that there was.
Oh my God, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's like Alfred says from Batman, why do we fall? So we can pick ourselves back up. And what you said describing, like, they're getting beat up. And then the moment they lose in that, was it 94 or 95?
For against the Bad Boys,
Yeah.
that was around 80, I believe, 89, 90.
Oh, right. It was before. It was before the
Yeah,
first three-peat. Excuse me.
yeah,
You're right.
exactly.
So again, right there and then, they just picked themselves right back. Again, this is earlier in the series. We're coming back now. They
Yeah,
just hit the gym right away, and they're not willing to quit. And it's almost like maybe this is not the overlying arc of the story, but it's something that has to be noted. It's like Michael taught us, the viewers, that the only person, or how should I put it, the biggest obstacle to your own success is yourself. It
Mm-hmm.
is your mind. It is the games that you play with yourself. And sometimes it takes someone else or that right attitude to, again, light that fire under your ass and go, let's go. There is nothing you can't do. And even when the odds were against them, they proved that they were able to surpass and overcome just about anything and everything. And I think that speaks volumes to Michael's spirit again.
I couldn't agree more with what you just said, Ryan. And you know that Bulls team maybe did minor changes to the roster, or maybe no changes at all. And you know they just accepted that they were the losing team. They accepted the fact that they were not the better team, and they took it upon themselves to change their own situation. And that's what makes that whole Bulls dynasty just legendary. And I think that everybody saw that.
And you can't, like, it's like what you just said, that's not just basketball, man. That's
No.
everything.
Yeah.
That's life in general. That's your schooling, that's sports, that's relationships.
Yeah.
That's, that is literally everything in life. And I think that is, in my opinion, I think it's so fascinating to be able to connect sports and specifically this Bulls dynasty to just everyday life. And I think that's why it could connect with everyone. And it's funny, I was thinking about Michael Jackson, oh boy, Michael Jordan.
Wrong MJ. Wrong MJ.
Wrong MJ. But, I was thinking about the better MJ, Michael Jordan. And, it got me thinking, especially when you look at that, very first championship they win, it reminded me very much of Rocky 1 and 2. I don't know if you've seen those movies, but
I haven't.
Rocky, well, basically it comes down to a man who is under the gun and he faces the thumb of a god basically on him.
Okay.
And all he can do is keep pushing. And if he does keep pushing, he will prevail, but he does not have the mental capacity and fortitude at the beginning to muster up the courage and the effort to go and keep going. But he somehow does, because there's something intrinsic in him that makes him just go, I cannot stop, which is why Rocky is famous for just taking punch after punch after punch and just going the distance and winning. It is the same thing with MJ. He just did not stop. It was almost like the moment they won or lost, he was still back in the gym practicing. I mean, for everyone listening and who's a fan of the movie Space Jam, he was filming that, and then he'd practice. His days were 12 to 15 hours. He would literally shoot the movie, and then, no pun intended, he would shoot the movie, and then he would practice, and then he'd have some side games where he'd invite the best NBA players to come in and play with him. And sometimes that was even during the breaks, during the Space Jam lunches when he's supposed to be in his trailer. This man never stopped.
Right. And he was all about basketball, right? And, that could also be perceived as something that, he was critiqued for often. So I don't know if you remember, but during the series, there's some people that are criticizing him for not taking a stance with any social issues that were going on.
Political issues, yeah, of course.
So,
yeah.
and one of the main reasons why, Michael Jordan, before this docuseries, never speaks out on anything is that he's just strictly about business, right? And, there were some key athletes throughout that period, who were speaking up. And, if I can mention somebody in the NBA, there was Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, I believe his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if I just didn't say that right, but he was, just a player that his career came to an end because he was taking a social justice stance. And, for a guy like Michael Jordan, who's the face of the league at that time, maybe it wasn't the best decision for him, according to his perspective, and that's why he didn't take a stance on things. But
right,
just to relate back to your point, this guy was all about business and all about winning basketball games, and that's what he strictly did in every single aspect of his life.
I think about it, and like if you're him, again, we can't be him, but I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to completely distance yourself from these political and social issues. You know, I understand you have a platform, and I understand, you know, this is before social media, so he really had probably the largest platform.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're there to play basketball, you're there to play basketball, you know, and I get it though. It's like saying, well, you know, if people are hungry in the streets right next to you and you just say, no, I'm not going to help even when you can, well, I get the criticism, but I also understand that as a champion and as someone dedicated, you know, so heavily into his craft, he had blinders set purposefully by him
Yeah.
on everything other than winning the beautiful game, you
Hmm.
know? And in this case, we're not talking about soccer because that's what they call it, the beautiful game. In this case, we're talking about fucking basketball. And
Yeah.
that was his goal. I don't necessarily blame him for that, but I see where you're coming from. You know, he ate a lot of criticism, and the documentary displayed that. And I don't think it was a bad thing to criticize him, but at the end of the day, he's a basketball player. And while people elevated him and saw him as a social figure, if I'm him and I want to just win championships and I want to distance myself, you know, at the end of the day, he didn't vote for these people. You know, like one of the situations was to endorse a senator, possibly the first black senator in that area, you
Hmm.
know, as opposed to someone who was a stone cold racist. Now, yes, he probably should have endorsed the other person who just barely lost, but at the same time, it is not directly his responsibility to elevate anybody else other than himself as a basketball player, period.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, I
If you
would.
want to,
I completely
right,
agree with you. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to go out of your way and do that, that's great, but you don't owe anyone anything. To be fair, he probably voted in the direction that people wanted him to. He probably acted philanthropically on the side in the way that people wanted him to, but that's not what he was there to advertise. His job was a basketball player, and he did that to a T. Mwah. And anybody that criticized him for doing anything else, well, maybe needs to wake up and smell the coffee a little, because, or wake up and smell the three times two, six championship rings that he had,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. No, exactly.
I
And
don't,
like you said, he was great at just staying in his lane. Although like today, we would expect athletes to not do that because we're living in a different era. But I th- I I think that if he would have taken a different route, eventually it would have got into it, and it would have affected his game. So for the game of basketball, was it good that he maybe didn't take any you know clear political stance? Yes, because he gave us the full Michael Jordan experience and to its finest. But if he were a player today, would I personally want him to speak out on things like LeBron James is doing, for example, today? Yes, I would. So I think it's just a question of eras and different times and the media and stuff like that. And
mm,
everything changes.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Coming back to the actual finals, what do you think? You know, not enough can be said about one of the things you said before is, you have to surround yourself with the right people. And
Yeah.
I'll repeat that. In life, you have to surround yourself with the right people. Gretzky had Yari Curry, he had McSorley. Um, talking about hockey for a second, Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. Talk to me about the impact that Scottie Pippen had on Michael Jordan and on the team in general.
So Scottie Pippen, first off, a lot of accolades come to him, right? And the NBA said, listed him as a top 50 player of all time, as he is. You know, he's a defensive player first. I think he's one of the first, players to show, a two-way side to his game. So, when I'm talking about two ways, I'm talking about, really perform well on the offensive end and the defensive end. But, Scottie Pippen, some say he was more talented than Michael Jordan. You could make a case about that, but what differs Scottie Pippen from Michael Jordan was his personality. He was able to, to be the second guy on a team. Um, he was able to guard the best guy and, still give you 20 a game and stuff like that. So, Scottie Pippen, I believe, was the perfect match for Michael Jordan because I do think that they had the same mindset, but their personalities were different in the way that they communicate and stuff like that. And you saw that, during that first retirement of Michael Jordan, right? Scottie Pippen was averaging, I think, 22 points per game, 8 rebounds at 50% field goal percentage, which is, an
That's
MVP
great.
candidate of like statistical level, right? The
Right.
Bulls were they were having a winning record of they were winning 50 games, losing 20. I do believe he was in the MVP conversation at that time. And out of all of that, the main message that I think shocked everything in this docuseries is that Scottie Pippen wasn't getting paid at all during his time with the Bulls, right? So during his first retirement, he was getting paid maybe $3 million for a season for carrying that team that, Michael Jordan was the man. And now the spotlight was all on Scottie Pippen. He was supposed to carry that team to a championship with $3 million in his bank account. And yeah, again, I'm saying $3 million as if it's nothing, but we're obviously comparing it
compared to hundreds. Yeah, of course,
exactly.
of course.
So
yeah,
it's just, he's the definition, I believe, of a team player. He's going to give you everything he has. He was the perfect second leader for that Bulls team. He was.
He's so calm and graceful too. You look at him in interviews, I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you look at Jordan, and it's bombastic, it's big, it's large, it's wide, it's full of life. And not to say that Scottie Pippen isn't, but he's got a much more calm, thoughtful, methodical, meticulous approach to things.
Yeah,
and
man.
you can see that. His passing percentages were great. He was always, much like Dennis Rodman, always looking at defense first and looking at the players. It's funny because I'm not about. I feel like I feel like I could talk to you about this for a long time.
Yeah.
But you see the way Scottie was every facet of the game that if Michael had any weaknesses, Scottie covered.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that you can't do everything on your own. It's like, again, bringing it back to Rocky, just life in general. Every man, well, I don't know if the expression is exactly that, but a good man and that goes across the board to sports and anything else. If you have the support of or are complemented by someone that is able to elevate all of your qualities while gracefully acknowledging their own and implementing them to the best of their capabilities with the most effort possible, well, then the sum of your parts truly is, I keep butchering that statement. They are greater. There you go. They are greater than the sum of their parts. And it's amazing because that is probably the most compelling thing for me watching it. It was to see every secondary piece fit the puzzle perfectly. Phil Jackson, like you said, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Steve Kerr, Paxton, Kukoc, sorry. They all fit perfectly, but I think no one fit better than Scottie Pippen. And looking at that, I was like, wow, that, sometimes, in relationships or, in our jobs, we look for things that fit us perfectly. Sometimes you need a counterbalance. And I think Scottie was exactly that to Michael.
Yeah, he was, I don't think people and basketball fans view him as a sidekick because he had the level of talent of, a franchise player. But it's like you said, he was, I think the perfect guy that was the perfect piece to fill in all of MJ's weaknesses. And the only thing that, maybe Scottie didn't have was the superstar personality where, he's talking to the cameras all day and, millions of people are viewing him and want to see him. you know, he too was all about basketball, all about knowing what his role was with the team. And, you know, throughout the series, when he's talking one-on-one to the camera, you just see somebody that was always selfless. And he was able to recognize what MJ did for him and his career. And he's able to say that with pride. And that's, I think, something that sometimes players can't do. They're too prideful, and they can't acknowledge the fact that another player influenced their game, or, you know, a teammate even influenced their game and stuff like that. So that was a super interesting, and I'm happy that they put a full episode on Scottie Pippen, because he deserves it fully.
I couldn't agree more. For those that can hear it, by the way, I'm in a studio outside. I've kind of isolated myself to have this conversation with Mark, and sure enough, it just started raining. So if you hear a little pitter patter, I do apologize, but we're wrapping it up soon. Don't worry. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I love you, man. I love talking to you about this stuff. It's crazy how the sport of basketball and one athlete can transcend the sport and really bond and unite people regardless of their background, ethical, be it ethical or religious or spiritual or wherever you come from. When you watch this, you feel compelled to be better. You feel compelled to win. You feel that desire to get up and get the fuck out and just do what you got to do and win. Win, Mark. Win.
Hey, back at you, Ryan. To be honest, I would have never thought that we would take all this time to talk about Michael Jordan and the Bulls and basketball and stuff like that. And I'm just, you know, just the fact that we're taking all this time, and, you know, you're saying your opinion like really clearly, and you're bringing this whole other perspective that I didn't get.
Well, Mark, I didn't ask you to toot my own horn here. I've done this podcast before. It's all...
Hey, look, Ryan, I'm just trying to, you know, give you some basketball credit out here, you know, just so you can have another guest talk about this.
Thanks, man. I feel you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I appreciate your time, and, you know, anytime again when you want to talk about it, just let me know, and it'd be my pleasure to come back on the show.
Absolutely, man. And to all of those listening, I can't stress this enough. If there's anything that The Last Dance and Michael Jackson, frankly, what's going on with the world right now. I said Michael Jackson again.
Yeah, I had to correct you.
Michael Jordan. Oh, you had to correct me. You had to. I'm so sorry. If there's anything that Michael Jordan and The Last Dance has taught us, it's that resilience always wins. Love always wins. Compassion always wins. Effort and drive will always beat complacency and laziness. For everyone listening, thank you so much. Don't ever stop. Keep on winning and keep going, because your last dance is far from right now. Take care. All the best.